Okay, hi, let's talk. This is my June wrap-up. It is late. I don't care. I was on vacation. I had other things going on in my life, so we're just gonna do it now. Question before we start. Do you guys like wrap-ups? Because I don't read month by month. I read just like as I read. I don't keep track of like, I have to get this done in a week, I have to get this done in a month, that type of thing. So wrap-ups feel like a strange method to me. For me personally, I watch people's wrap-ups. It's like content I enjoy. And I also don't like some of the books I read and just feel very neutral about them, so don't want to talk about them. So let me know your thoughts on wrap-ups, and if you want to watch them from me, and I can make them. Like, I can definitely talk about books, but I probably won't talk about every book. I'm considering linking this to my Goodreads. I don't always post reviews of books on there, but maybe for the books that I don't talk about, I might put a sentence or two. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that too. Anyway, in the month of June, I read Affinity by Sarah Waters, Gutshot by Amelia Gray, Nevada by Imogen Binney, Love After the End, an anthology of Two-Spirit and indigiqueer speculative fiction, edited by Joshua Whitehead, Elatsoe by Darcy Littlebadger, Leave the World Behind by Rumin Alam, Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, Three Scenarios in Which Hana Sasaki Grows a Tail by Kelly Luce, The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, and that's it. So for some of these, I have dedicated reviews. Let's go through those. I read Affinity by Sarah Waters, really enjoyed it. I am doing a series of is this author a one-hit wonder for me? So I really liked a book by them before. Is that the only one, or do I think I'm going to continue liking their books? It's an experiment. That's the only one I've done so far. You could watch it. I'll have it linked. I really enjoyed that book. I think I liked it more than Fingersmith, so Sarah Waters is not a one-hit wonder. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This is the second book I have read by Celeste Ng. I did a video about Celeste Ng's Little Fires Everywhere and Everything I Never Told You, kind of comparing the thematic content and the plot and structure of those two books. I enjoyed Everything I Never Told You. I think, again, I liked it more than Little Fires Everywhere. I'm trying to be snappy with these first ones, but it's about family dynamics in a suburban community and just like the inner workings of a very small nuclear family and how they perceive each other and how they interact with each other, and especially when a tragedy strikes the family. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This one is a reread for me. It is a light sci-fi. It is fun and queer and a warm blanket of science fiction. I mean, it's a reread, so obviously I enjoyed this book. I have a review on it where I go into a lot more detail, and it's a lot more structured, where I talk about like plot and structure and pacing and characters and themes and all of that. So I will link that one above and below. Good luck editing, Elle. Okay, those are the three that I had. Oh, nope, that's not, I lied. There's one more. Okay, The Fellowship of the Ring. This was the first time I've ever read Lord of the Rings. I really liked this. That was surprising for me. I give my very spoilery thoughts on this book in my vlog, where I just vlog everything I'm thinking and feeling as I go. So if you're interested, watch that, or watch it down there. So aside from those, these are the ones that I read. Editing out. And these are the ones that I'm going to talk about in more detail. Let's start with Gutshot. So I had this on my short stories on my short story TBR, which I posted short story recommendations. These were weird fiction, horror-ish vignettes. It's hard to call this a book of short stories. Okay, there are 207 pages and there are 38 stories in this, which is why I consider them more vignettes, because you're really just getting a snippet or like a vibe of something. You're not really getting deep into anything. You're not getting into characters. You're not getting into worlds. You're not getting into plot. Like, you are getting a vibe, and like you're just getting this very small snippet of an idea. And a lot of what she's doing in this collection is taking real life and hyperbolizing it in some capacity. There's this one story where this like gay couple ends up like keeping a woman in the ducts of their house and like kind of keeps her there, but they're like feeding her through like the duct work. It's very weird. A lot of these I found very forgettable. There were a few I liked though. And the ones that I liked the most, I have it written down at the time, were Thank You and Labyrinth. I really, at this point, only remember Labyrinth. That one, I think, was really cool. Most interesting of all of them. I also had a feeling that there was, like, with some of them, it was very obvious that there was, like, what it was telling you, and then there was, like, a second meaning on top of it, and I could get that. And I have a feeling with a lot of these, there was a second meaning that maybe upon rereads I would have understood. I just didn't like it enough to understand it, so I didn't keep reading. Or I didn't reread it. I'm keeping the book because I've showed this before, but this cover, my God, I just love it. Like, look at that. And speaking of the cover, as the cover would kind of allude to, there's a lot of body horror in this. Some of it made me like a little queasy, but there's also like a lot of humor. So I'm normally not queasy when it comes to body horror. I can handle it, but if you don't like that, do not read this. All right, let's talk about the next one, Nevada by Imogen Binney. So this is it's about a trans woman, written by a trans woman, and she's like a messy woman who like kind of later in life figured out she was trans. We're a few years past her transition where she decided when she started presenting female. It's very like, I want to say conversational, but it's also very crass. There's a lot of like, fuck this and fuck you, and there's a lot of swearing. There's like a lot of drug use on the page. She's in a relationship where she doesn't really like the person, and how do I talk about this book? The first half of the book I wasn't super into. Then we get into a total different pace and total different vibe, and then there's the second half which I was appreciating, and then it just kind of ended and it was weird, and I was like, I needed another chapter, but I didn't get it. There's a lot of really interesting things explored here. There's the exploration of losing your patriarchal power when you transition from male to female. There's conversations around a lot of the like issues that trans people face, like mental health issues, lack of access to treatment. And then we meet a character who is probably trans and hasn't realized it yet. And there's this like dynamic of like trying to help someone realize it, but also like not being pushy about it because it's such a sensitive topic, and it's like, I mean, I can't pretend I know what it feels like to recognize that you're transgender and then presenting as like the gender that you are. But this book does a really good job of like getting you into that mind space, getting you into that headspace, and like at least books shouldn't always be about teaching you, but I learned a lot from reading this. That all being said, I found it to be, I was a little bored at times, and I found it to be a bit flawed in structure. In the writing, it was written in third person, but it was such a close third person, and we were getting all of like the main character's thoughts and feelings that it really felt like it should have been first person. I think that the the book would have done so much better as a first-person narrative, and I kind of wish it had gone through another round of editing. But again, I'm happy that this type of content exists and is being published. So that's that one. Next one. Okay, I read a lot of short story collections this month. So the next one is Love After the End, an anthology of two-spirit and indigiqueer speculative fiction, edited by Joshua Whitehead. So basically this book is two-spirit utopias and dystopias. I loved this. Again, a lot of different contributors, so mixed bag when it comes to stuff like that, but it did give me like the same vibes of Love Beyond Body, Space, and Time. And I was watching Books and Lala, and she talked about how some of the contributors from this contributed to this one that I'm talking about right now. And I thought some of them were connected. Like, I thought I was reading the same story over, but then I went to look in here and it was a different story. So they are loosely connected, but you don't have to read them in order by any means. It's not like they're connected like that. But Joshua Whitehead did not have a contribution to this book or this collection, but he did do an intro, and I loved it so much that I already had one of his books, Johnny Appleseed, on my TBR, but I'm much more intrigued to get to it right now because he had a really interesting perspective on things. Oh shoot, is he? He identifies as two-spirit, but still uses he/him pronouns. So everyone who published in this is indigiqueer, two-spirit. Most of the stories have like a wide array of indigiqueer representation in them. There's utopias and dystopias. There were science fiction elements. There was like multiple had conversations about like colonizing new planets, and just as indigenous folks who have had their land colonized, there was just a much more, I think, interesting perspective on that than sometimes you see in science fiction presented by non-indigenous folks. What I really love about anthologies, which I know they're not for everyone, I know not everyone likes that short story format, but they just open me up to so many new authors, and I put new people onto my radar, onto my TBR because of this, because I read a book by them and was like, wow, or read a short story by them and was like, wow, I'm intrigued by the ideas you have. So I didn't take a lot of notes, which I'm a little bummed about, but I took notes on two. There's metaphors about love and social acceptance. There's a lot about environmental collapse in a new world and human colonization. There's ones in which utopias for indigenous people exist, and there's ones where they're still having to basically fight for resources, or be left behind, or have their labor utilized in some capacity. I wish I took better notes on this one because I read it quite a while ago and I kind of forget a lot of the details of it, but I really encourage you to pick it up. Like, there was just such an interesting combination of ideas and thoughts and perspectives. In that way, it kind of reminds me of the other book I keep pushing, Invisible Planets, where just the science fiction ideas are very interesting. I keep saying interesting. They feel fresh. It feels like a fresh perspective from my eye as a reader that I haven't seen a lot in fiction, and I really recommend you pick this anthology up. So the next one, Elatsoe by Darcy Little Badger. Darcy Little Badger is Lipin Apache. This takes place in the real world, but there's like magic, like people can interact with spirits and interact with the spirit world, and there are vampires, and so it takes place like in a slightly futuristic, slightly more technologically advanced US. It is a YA novel. The main character is Ace, which is why I picked it up in the month of June, and I would totally recommend this to people who like YA and to young readers. As YA goes for me, it just didn't really work. It was cute. There was like a ghost dog. I loved that. But the protagonist was like an older teenager. She came across younger to me. There was a relationship between her and her best friend who was male, and they had been best friends for years, and there was just very strange things that they didn't know about each other, and it was like, the author was trying to give us information, and she gave it to us by by means of an explanation through her to like her protagonist and her best friend interacting, but I'm just like, your best friend should know that about you if you guys have been actually best friends for that long. So there was some unbelievable elements there. I also had a hard time with the dialogue at parts. It was very stilted and awkward. It might have just been the audiobook, which I don't recommend this audiobook. The narrator did not really differentiate voices at all, so I had a really hard time understanding who was talking at points, especially if there was a larger group of people, and even if there was a smaller, because even between the best friend and her, who one was male and one was female, you would think that like you would deepen your voice for one, or like, you know, change some sort of way that you speak. That's kind of what I expect of audiobook narrators, and that didn't really happen here. So that was a bit unfortunate. But yeah, it was a cute, fun mystery. Darcy Little Badger did have a story in Love After the End, the collection I just talked about, and I really liked her story in there, so I'm definitely not discounting her as a narrator or an author. I just think that YA is never really going to be my thing. So I still would read her books, but like YA is just not really for me. But I try. I try every once in a while. It just reads too young. The themes are too on the nose. There are some plot things that I wasn't a huge fan of. I would recommend this to my teenage self. I think at around the age of like 14, I would have really liked this book. It's a mystery. There's no love interest, which I always am a fan of in YA. There's like supernatural elements. There's conversations with family. So like there's a lot of great things about this book, and I'm not discounting it at all. Not for me as a 28-year-old. Leave the World Behind by Rumin Alam. This got a lot of hype last year. It's about a white family who goes out and has a trip, like a nuclear family of 4 that goes on a trip to the Hamptons, and then the black owners of the house end up coming back home. And I thought it was going to be, like there are conversations around race. I thought it was going to be a lot, which I know I'm putting my expectations on a book, but I thought that the conversation around race was going to be a lot more prominent. Like maybe it was just like too seamlessly weaved into the narrative, and so I was missing things. But it was just really weird, like strange things starts happening. Like there's some disaster going on and you don't really know what it is, and that's never really described to you. And I'm normally okay with that, but the things that were occurring were just so weird that I'm like, you gotta give me something. Like, teeth are falling out and you're not giving me anything? All right. Yeah, there was just nothing really for me to latch onto. Like, I found it was mysterious, so I was intrigued to continue, but I didn't like it. And I wouldn't recommend it. All right, last one I'm going to talk about, another short story collection. 3 scenarios in which Hana Sasaki grows a tail by Kelly Luce. These all take place in Japan. The author is white and from America, but lived in Japan for 3 years and kind of wrote these based on her experience there. There are 10 books over the course of 132 pages, so they are longer than the last one, but not much longer. There's something mundane about them while still having strange elements, like Hana Sasaki grows a tail. That's not the only one where there's some tail growing happening. Some of them, nothing outside of like the normal happens, but there's still some weird elements to it. Some people grow tails. So there's I think that the one, like I'm looking back at the book list or the short story list now, and the one I remember the most is the starting one about a toaster that like doesn't grant people wishes but does something to that effect. If you are interested in looking for weirder fiction, I would recommend this more than Gutshot, but I didn't find it to be highly profound, and it really didn't stick in my head. Of the 3 short story collections I read this month, Love After the End was by far my favorite. I don't have too much to say about this. This is why I'm like, why am I wrapping things up when I'm just like, it was fine. I don't have much to say. I read it 3 weeks ago and I don't know what it's about anymore because that's how much is stuck in my mind. But yeah, that I think is my last one. That's all I have for this video. Tell me what you feel about this format. Should I do like my highs and lows in the month? Should I just like talk about stats and then talk about some that like stuck out to me, pick like 3 or 4? I don't know. You let me know. I'm interested what you have to say because you're the one that's going to be watching this, and I mean, I could go either way with this format. So, until next time, happy reading!